Hi, everybody. It's Joe Chaffee on this really insane Tuesday here, the September 25th at 21 after 7. I'm sorry for the late start here because we've had all kinds of severe weather between flash floods and also dealing with a tornado warning that was issued for Burlington County, central Burlington County in New Jersey. And it came up at about 6:50, and they just canceled it. So at least we're done. I'm also, bear with me also because I'm trying to get one of my colleagues on, and we've been having some Skype issues. So I'm going to try one more time to get him on the Skype. In the meantime, hopefully he'll call in. You guys can hear me okay? So just if you would, if a couple of you would just mention that you're hearing me, that would be great. So I got
hello.
Okay, Jeffrey is on. So hang on, Jeffrey, talk to me.
Hey, Joe.
All right. So talk a little more.
Talk. I love to talk.
Okay, so if my audience would just be so kind as to let me know that he's sounding okay and you're not hearing double mics, because I had to switch audio settings on the fly with everything that's happening. And Jeff Banson, one of my colleagues here, is going to join us tonight and talk about what's been going on with respect to the rain. Now, we just had this tornado warning up for central New Jersey, and I've got the I'm going to bring up the local radar view here. Mm-hmm. And we can speak to this. I'm just going to update it really fast. It's going to do a quick flash frame. So it looks like, you see the little box that showed up there. That's where the tornado warning was, and it's come and gone. And we still have some residual flash flood warnings that are up for parts of central New Jersey. But it looks like we're almost done with this because a lot of the rain is starting to slide off to the east.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like you and I were talking about a little earlier, warm fronts can be tricky things, and this thing just kind of kinked, and it was just like, I feel like it's so much water in a matter of hours. It really kind of caught us off guard. There were, I certainly didn't upplay to this to the best of my ability. There were no real indications that this warm front was going to be capable of producing prolonged heavy rain. We were saying all morning.
I would argue with you on this point, if only from this standpoint. A number of the models were robust enough to show a 2 to 3 inch rainfall. By the way, you froze on your video, but we could still hear you. Again, we're having a lot of problems here with all the heavy rain. There's probably some signal issues, and you're coughing very clearly. By the way, thank you. Look, the 2 to 3 inch rainfall was modeled pretty well. You had a good setup here. Had this warm front coming up. You had the marine layer. You had this strong east to southeast flow. We were going to transition over to see these dew points rise by almost 20 degrees. The thing is, it's very hard to come up with the idea that you've got you see a general 2 to 3 inch amount forecast, and you're going to forecast double that. That takes an awful lot of guts to do. I don't really blame any weather person for not doing it at all. I didn't do it.
No, I'm not trying to say that there were no indications there were going to be heavy rain. Of course not. But like you said, 2 to 3 inches. Well, right now the map I'm looking at, 4.5 in White Plains, 3.5 in Rockland County, more than that in Northeast Jersey. Those numbers, like you said, it would be really tough to just go out on a limb and say, even though there are some things that in place, if these things line up correctly, we could get 5-6 inches. These are rainstorms that you get maybe once a year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, well, yeah, it doesn't happen. One of the odd things about this warm front, Robert Hurley, who's on the chat board, said usually a warm front comes and goes quickly. Not here. Oftentimes the fronts do get hung up. This one kind of flew through, but it came to a grinding halt for a while this afternoon, right around New York City. You know, just basically if you draw a line from Philadelphia to New York City, north of the North Shore of Long Island, because up until this evening, Long Island's getting some heavy rains now, but before that, was all north and west to there in the overrunning zone, and it was pretty substantial. But you had temperatures that were in the low and middle 70s south of that warm front, and you had temperatures that were barely above 50 in some places up to the north. So you had a tight, very, very tight contrast. Warm fronts in this part of the world a lot of times get hung up because of the marine air, particularly in the spring. This one was, being that this is early fall, it packed quite a punch. I agree with you on that.
The numbers here I'm looking at in Jersey, 3.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.9, 4.7.
Where was the 4 points? Where's the 4.7?
Yonkers and right across. What is that? Like Tenafly over there. I mean, they just got so much water this afternoon. Right. It was really incredible.
There was also significant rain down by in and around Philadelphia as well, with rainfall amounts. Oh, we got. Let me see if I can pull this off. I might be able to add another person. Hopefully, your video will unfreeze. Let me see.
Keep talking. I want to make this point while you do what you got to do, but alluding to the temperature discrepancy this morning, it was at one point in time 52 degrees in northeast New Jersey and 72 degrees down the Jersey Shore. So you had a 20-degree for a matter of 50 miles.
You're unfrozen, by the way. Hang on.
Oh, good.
I got to bring you up on the screen here, so just 1 second.
Okay.
So you're there.
20-degree temperature difference, and Long Island and southern New Jersey really didn't get a lot of this rain until that line of thunderstorms, the one that produced the tornado in southern Jersey and Burlington County, and the one that produced the flash flood warnings out into the island, even as far east as western Suffolk, Bridgeport, Connecticut. Until that came through, there really wasn't much going on to the south. It was almost like we got dried out, dry air from the south.
Yeah.
And the warm front, like you said, kind of kinked. But and then, it was weird. I'm out on central Long Island. We had a burst of rain and then nothing. A burst of rain lasted a minute or two and then nothing. And it just went on for a while. And then finally, a nice big soaking, and that's what prompted that flash flood warning.
Shelly, one of the folks on my chat board tonight on YouTube, Shelly Man Studios, said, where he is in Bridgeport, because Southwest Connecticut also got into some of this really heavy rain, and
yes, they did.
It still has some time to go on. You're unfrozen, by the way, so we can see you well. We can see you pretty well. Let's see. Delvin just joined me to tell me that Andrew Pinheiro is live on YouTube at the same time, and I can Skype him in. He's got Walter. Everybody say hi to Walter.
This is Weather Walter.
My regular viewers remember when I had my cat Kovu, who used to go into the cabinets behind me and pull stuff out while I was trying to do a live stream, but he's no longer with us. So you hold on to Walter. Let's talk about tomorrow. With respect to the severe weather threat that's up for tomorrow. Now, you would think, a lot of times when we have situations, follow me on this. If it's on the same day where you get the warm front to come through and then a cold front follows, and sometimes you get you think there's going to be a severe weather threat with the cold front that follows, but the warm front comes through, basically just zaps the whole atmosphere, all the moisture out of the atmosphere. And when the cold front arrives, it has very little to work with it.
Right.
This time around might be different, though, because the warm front has come through now. We're talking about 24 hours from now, as we're going into these dew points in the 70s, and we're going to have a whole day tomorrow of some halfway decent daytime heating that's going to go on. What do you think for tomorrow?
80s, humidity, dew points probably getting up to around 70, fuel, and perhaps Walter's going nuts right now. It's like he went haywire. He's running up and down the stairs. And you may have seen me look up during when you were just talking. I heard another downpour of rain up on the roof. You've got the humidity, you got the moisture there in the atmosphere. I haven't checked the precipitable water, but I'd have to imagine it might be pretty high tomorrow. I'm not sure about that. But also you're going to have in the afternoon potentially some clearing and some sun. That could really spark these things off. Now, the timing, and I don't know if it changed because I haven't checked any of the models this afternoon, but the timing had it coming.
Looks like more late afternoon, early evening, instead of being at like 9 or 10 o'clock. So I think that kind of times out for some areas that, we could get some pretty strong cells here. By the way, I want to jump over to the system that's off the North Carolina coast, because we have an Air Force reconnaissance aircraft there, Jeffrey. So you're gonna disappear from the screen for a little while, but we certainly can hear you. And I'm gonna bring up. I'm
gonna eat.
But we do have a recon, and I've got the graphic courtesy of Tropical Tidbits. So I'm gonna bring that up front and center.
All right.
And for those that were basically pushing the idea that this system was going to develop back into a tropical depression or a tropical storm, well, the lowest pressure of 1,016 really doesn't cut it too much. And when you look at the wind field, they're really, in terms of sustained winds, I can't see anything over 20 knots, at least so far. So this thing is running out of time. If it was going to redevelop, it should have done so already. And I just don't think that we're going to have that happen.
Oh yeah, I was talking to you about this before. Pretty much that's it. It's time is against it, and at some point it's going to get picked up by this trough and ushered out to sea. Who knows? Maybe it strengthens a little more further out near the Atlantic.
But as far as making a difference, I did notice that there was some enhanced rains going on in eastern North Carolina today. But, you wonder with everything that is going on, you probably would have seen it anyway. By the way, there's another area of severe weather tonight that we should bring attention to. We'll bring up the whole radar. You can see pretty much the northeast, most of the northeast, but also going back to the Midwest. That front we're talking about for tomorrow is producing some severe weather. I'm going to update this really quick. Hang on one second here, folks. Let me just refresh the page. So we can have the latest radar view. And we have a line of storms now moving through Chicago and just passed through Milwaukee, Chicago into northeastern Illinois. So that's part of the system that is coming through here. And also, not to leave the folks out in central and eastern Connecticut, so you're getting into some of the heavy rains now that were falling over New Jersey and the Hudson Valley a bit earlier, although you did get some rain during the day today. But this last band seems to be moving through at the moment. Also, some hefty weather in the form of some showers and storms across parts of central Kentucky and down into central Tennessee. So it's pretty busy on the radar. I think you're right for tomorrow, Jeffrey. It's going to be going into this. You're going to be getting this very unstable atmosphere setting up tomorrow. It may not be the most ideal of conditions, but I think there certainly would be enough that we're going to have that every bit of a slight risk for severe, and we might even go to enhanced risk.
Yeah, Norman, Oklahoma Storm Prediction Center has us in slight right now for most of the area. I think Long Island is in marginal. Certainly a good bet that the storms weaken as they hit the water, but you never know. I mean, they can hold together long enough. The water's still fairly warm this time of year, so maybe the marine layer not as pronounced as it might be, especially in the early stages of summer. But we'll be keeping an eye on it. It probably won't take us off guard, if something does come of it.
All right. I want to move on to a couple of other things that are happening that are very interesting for what we're going into the last part of September and the early part of October, because we have stuff happening in places that we don't normally pay attention to that I think we need to bring front and center. First off, I have a satellite loop here right now in the Pacific, off the coast of Mexico, where we have Tropical Storm Rosa, and I'm showing this because we do have a number of models that strengthen this into a major hurricane. But oddly enough, which is something that is rarely seen, we do have a potential setup for Rosa to recurve north and northeastward, going into perhaps central or northern Baja California late in the weekend or early next week, and then spreading some significant rains possibly into southern California or southeastern California, and into parts of the Southwest. It's an odd setup. But it is quite plausible, believe it or not.
Yeah, and that moisture could get picked up in the jet stream, and it probably has a chance to affect us at some point later next week.
I put up the model track guidance is all. I always tell everybody when you see all the track models kind of clustered together, it gives you some degree of confidence. But we do see a bit of a spread. They start to spread out a little bit in the longer range, but a number of them have that, the turn to the north and then northeastward toward the central part of the Baja Peninsula. This would likely weaken to, even if it were to get to, say, a Cat 3 or 4, which the Hurricane Center is actually predicting this to happen. It may only wind up being a Cat 1 by the time it gets near that part of the Baja Peninsula because of the cooler water, but nonetheless, it might impact a place that doesn't see this sort of stuff too often.
Right, they could be a little more vulnerable, but I do agree with you that I don't see it being a 3 or a 4 by landfall, maybe a 2,
or
more than likely probably a 1. Yeah, but with the cooler water. But again,
the biggest threat's going to be heavy rain for those areas, though.
People forget sometimes that not everybody is a Florida. Not everybody is an area where, not everybody is an island where, they're used to, a 1 or a 1 or a 2. The islands are the only ones that can scoff at that, because usually even if they bring heavy rain, it's for a short period of time because their area of their landmass is so small. We here in the United States can't scoff at anything because, as you and I both know, tropical storms, Category 1s, can produce just as much, if not more, rainfall, just as much of a storm surge as well. But, especially in the areas that are not used to it, you get a Category 1, you get a tropical storm, man, it hits it the right way, you can have a mess on your hands.
Oh, no question. I have the GFS ensembles. I just put those up. And actually, of all the models, the GFS is the furthest north with this. The mean track is, in the northern part of the Baja Peninsula. This could be I think this could wind up being a serious rainmaker for the Southwest when it's all said and done.
Yeah, sunny LA, maybe not for a couple of days.
Well, that may be a little too. That might be a little too far north, but San Diego.
San Diego more so, and places in the desert where you don't see much rain in Arizona. So
the hurricane, just to show everybody the Hurricane Center's forecast on this, as it rides along 15 degrees north, it moves west to west-northwest into Friday, then turns more northerly as we go in through the weekend, and it's still well offshore on Sunday. So we're talking early next week for this. With respect to whether anything is going to happen. The other thing that's really interesting is Typhoon Trami, which I have the satellite loop up now. Again, all courtesy of Tropical Tidbits. It has weakened from yesterday. It's a Category 3, but it's still very well defined on the satellite loop. Sorry, I'm eating my dinner too and talking at the same time. The eye actually gets a bit cloud-filled as the loop moves along, but this is going to move over Japan. I have the, their version of the Hurricane Center's forecast map. It's a little more complicated because they draw the radius of winds as the track moves all along. But they do have it moving on to Japan as probably a Category 2 when it makes landfall. And then 95 knots, so 110 miles an hour, so a Cat 2.
It's a Cat 2, yeah.
It's forecast to kind of move right over the entire island nation of Japan and move northeastward. Both the GFS ensembles are like really tight with this. But the one thing I did notice, Jeffrey, is looking at the long range, when you have, sometimes you get these typhoons out in the West Pacific, they can energize the pattern downstream so that they have impact on the pattern for us. And I'm going to bring up, so everybody can see it, the upper air with this on the GFS. So I'm going to load.
You and I were looking at the exact same thing earlier today.
Right.
We saw how, you know, a couple of the troughs kind of merge together and sort of bomb out, if you will.
So have you,
and not to say that this would for sure cause anything down the road in the next week, but if it did, it certainly could bring a lot of moisture our way. And these are things
it's more than it's more than that, though. Trami, I think we know with Rosa that the moisture might eventually find its way here in some fashion, but that's down the road. I'm thinking more along the lines of the fact that it's going to be impacting the weather pattern across North America in the long range, because when we put it in motion, it lifts up, kind of merges with this upper low that's in Northeast Asia, and then that thing just gets shoved toward the Aleutians. Now, there's a big raging argument today between the GFS and the European, because the GFS kind of wants to now has this thing cutting off in the Bering Sea, and it wants to hold on to this ridge in the east longer with the trough in the west. Okay,
I see.
And the European is completely different. All right, completely different. The European, and this is going to be very interesting to see which model wins out on this, because when we look at the European model, it has the whole situation with Trami. You know, it energizes that same upper low, but instead it shoves it into the eastern Aleutians by 240 hours, and that drives a ridge up the west coast and drives troughing in the eastern part of the United States.
Yep.
It's a completely.
Yep.
If you match it up the two at the same time frame for the GFS and the European, they are 180 degrees apart. And it's going to be very interesting to see which model wins out on all this.
I'm already looking down the line towards late next week. So take the GFS solution. It doesn't have as big of an impact because, again, it holds it, like you said, out into the Bering Sea. And it looked like if all things, weren't greatly impacted from this, that there could actually be some East Coast ridging late next week. There could be a little of maybe an Indian summer. Maybe we get some real warm days. Maybe we get some 80-degree days, string them together. But like you said, if the Euro comes true and you get that trough driven down, if you get that
scenario,
that ridge driven up the West Coast, right? If you get that ridge driven up the East Coast, West Coast, and then you get that trough then dragged down to the East Coast, that's not going to happen. So, like you said, it'll be very interesting to see what happens. Let me ask you a question, Joe. I'm not sure what the next term after Trani is, but
there's a couple of them. There's a bunch of them going to be running around on the Pacific side.
Yeah. Does the Euro, like the GFS, show almost a carbon copy of Trani, where it comes up right off the coast of the Philippines, kind of just sits there for a second, and then plows into southern Japan? Because that's what.
All right, let me go back and look at it.
The GFS showed that today. It almost showed like a 1-2 punch. Not even that much time.
You know what? It doesn't. The European instead takes it more westerly, so it doesn't lift it up right behind it. It pushes it more toward the Philippines.
But it does produce another strong typhoon that hasn't formed yet. Correct?
Yes, but it's not as obvious on the European. It looks like it might be a little bit weaker.
Okay. All right.
So there's a lot of things going on with going down the road. So we're certainly going to have a lot of fun watching all this. So
absolutely.
you go finish your dinner, because you know you've got an early call. So you go finish your dinner and then get ready for bed. And I'm gonna do a few other things going forward. So thanks a lot for coming on. You know you're always welcome here.
Thank you so much for having me on. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
All right, so you go night now. I'm gonna just shut you. I'm gonna just turn you off. Good night. And there goes my buddy Jeff Banson. I want to go back to. Let me go back to the weather model so we can take a look at what's going on as far as the rest of the week is concerned. And by the way, if I can get, I got to see. I didn't get a chance to set this up, but I did notice a couple of days ago, with respect to the Mediterranean Sea, they may be having another one of those what they call metacanes. They're worried about some severe coastal flooding in Malta because of the what's happening with this what looks like a pretty fierce storm in the Mediterranean Sea. I'm not going to have a chance to pull up a European satellite loop and find, because it'll take me a while to find it, but I'll try and remember to do it for tomorrow. But I want to at least show you, in terms of the downstream pattern here in North America going forward, the European and the GFS, totally different in how this all plays out in the longer haul. And like I said, I'm going to be curious to see how this plays. So right now we have a very strongly negative East Pacific oscillation at work, okay? And as a result, you're seeing, normally that means cold in the east, but the problem is that the NAO is also positive, so there's a little bit of an offset. You got a ridge off the southeast coast, a little bit of ridging, but at least there's enough of this trough so that we're going to get into a fairly decent shot of cooler air for this weekend, a nice dry air. So it should be a very nice autumnish weekend. But the European, while it tries to bring that ridge up, as we move into the first part of next week, it stays very flat, and it brings this upper low in northwest Canada and drives it southeastward. Okay, if we look at the GFS for the same time frame, you'll see the difference. It's got a ridge. The GFS drives it more to the south, into southwestern Canada, and builds a ridge rather strongly in the east for the same time. It's a completely opposite scenario. And again, if where this upper low winds up out in the Pacific is going to be key, because you got a ridge here off the west coast in the Gulf of Alaska, and that's not how it gets cool in the eastern part of the United States. But look at the difference with the European. More troughing in as a deep trough into the Gulf of Alaska, and a ridge going up the west coast. Again, it's almost a 180-degree difference between the two models after you get through the first 5 or 6 days. So what the outcome is going to be, in my view, is pretty much anyone's guess, but it's going to be absolutely fascinating to see it all play out. In the meantime, let's come back home, and at least I'm not even going to speculate much beyond the next 5 or 6 days, because since the models are so diametrically opposed, it might be kind of a futile thing to do. But here you have, of course, what's happening for tomorrow. That front comes through. Again, I think there's a pretty good chance that there's going to be severe weather with this. The Storm Prediction Center hasn't really changed their map too much in terms of the risk area, but we can we'll bring that up. Sometimes they do update this during the day. So there's the risk area going on now, where we have the severe thunderstorm watch up for parts of northeastern and central Illinois. But as far as tomorrow is concerned, we can bring up the risk area here. It's fair for this time of year. This is a fairly large area of risk that's being indicated for severe weather, which is from northeastern West Virginia, northern Virginia, small part of southeastern Ohio, and then shooting all the way up into northern New England, including a good chunk of the state of Maine, because this warm front is really going to go pretty far north. So I think the key for the severe weather tomorrow is how much sun breaks out. If we get a fair amount of sun and take temperatures up into the middle 80s, which is certainly not out of the question, we could have a rather interesting run of severe weather here tomorrow night. So going forward, The southern end of that front is going to stall somewhat. Does bring in some rain for you, Johnny Quest, going into the end of the week. But this is going to be for Friday morning that our area gets clipped with a couple of showers. And then after that, we've got this nice high. And by the way, this high is not building to the north of us. It's actually coming in from the west. So there really isn't going to be much of an onshore flow here at all. It should be nice for Saturday and Sunday. And in the lower left, you can see there is what should be Major Hurricane Rosa going into the weekend. And now we're into Monday. The GFS moving it fairly quickly towards central Baja. It might be a little bit further south than it was on the prior run by a bit. But you can see the heavy rain that gets into southeastern California and southern Nevada, western Arizona. I mean, this could be a serious flash flooding issue for that part of the U.S. And, of course, the moisture gets pulled up northeast and northward toward the Great Lakes eventually. Now, this is where we don't know. This is going to fall into the category of which models got it right, because if there's a ridge in the east building here, it's just going to be warm and dry, relatively speaking, in terms of rain, although it'll be, the dew points will come up a little bit. But all the action's going to be up through the plains and the Great Lakes and in the Rockies, and even some snow showing up in parts of the central and northern Rockies here later next week. But if there's a ridge in the west and the trough is going to come into the east, that changes everything. So we're probably sure maybe out till about Monday at this point. And by the way, the European with Rosa is further to the left. Okay, it's further offshore. And actually, and this is the one of the differences with the European and the GFS here too, is that another hurricane forms and absorbs Rosa, and it doesn't really become an issue for Baja or for Southern California. So you can see what a huge disparity we have with respect to these weather models. And I've got problems with both of them because both models have had their moments where they have done well and where they have done badly. And I'm highly suspect with regards to what we're going to be seeing beyond the 5 or 6 day time frame, both on the long range weather pattern and also on the fact that of how these models are handling the tropics, because they have been, there's been a lot of volatility in how the models have been handling the tropics. Let me just really quick, by the way, just let me take an opportunity here, first off, to thank all of you for being here. I just want to do just a little bit of what I call, the shameless self-promotion. But for those of you who have joined my platform on Patreon, thank you so much. I just put up a link on the chat board, and there's a link on the descriptor to this video. It is a, I think it's a great way to see all the stuff that I produce and put it all on one platform. And on top of that, you get extra stuff that doesn't show up on my website. We've been doing a video every morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, exclusive for Patreon members. You will watch it through YouTube, but nobody knows about it because I'm keeping it unlisted. So I send you the link, you come on, you sit with, you're watching this with other weather people, so there are no flat earth people, there are no geoengineering people, there are no HAARP people, H-A-A-R-P, and not A-A-R-P, so no HAARP people, none of that nonsense, so we don't waste any time. We do it every morning. We've been doing it in the morning at 9 a.m., so that's another feature on the Patreon. It's a subscription platform. It starts as $2. It starts at $2 a month. There are higher tiers if you're feeling generous. Some of you have done that, and I really thank you very much for it. It's a great way to support my channel and what I'm doing with everything I have and more, because I mentioned this. We do have the launching of my app. That is the next thing that's on the agenda, and hopefully within the next couple of weeks we'll be putting up a free app out there for you. It'll generally focus on the New York, New Jersey, Long Island, Southern New England, Hudson Valley area, but it is a, you know, you might have fun with it because I do a lot of other posts, and everything that I post will come right to the app, minimal advertising on it, and it's fast loading, and you get notifications, which has been the big problem with Facebook. Not getting notifications when we go live there, not getting notifications when I put weather posts. You get notifications on the Patreon page. So I just wanted to just bring that up. And thank you for the kind words, Robin J. Scott Briller can tell you more about Patreon too, by the way. Soaked in northern Rhode Island. More tomorrow, Robert Russo, with some evening thunderstorms. If they hold together as they move east, I would think you're going to get some of that there. You are in the slight risk for severe weather. And yes, I agree with you, Dave R. Facebook does the S word because they've just gotten evil. Thanks, John Curry. So you got some folks that are on here that can testify to the fact that I'm you know, it's a work in progress, but I'm figuring it out, and we'll figure out, you know, what works and what doesn't. And so far, so good. So again, link, I just put it up, and link on the descriptor to this video. I'm just trying to run through the rest of your chat questions here. I think I really am going to I'm going to really be interested in watching Rosa evolve. That is going to be fascinating if it winds up turning northward and northeastward. Not that we're rooting for it, but you know, if it does happen, it'll be a great forecasting experience because of the fact that we just don't see tropical systems impact this. I mean, we do see them from time to time, but you know, it's very rare that you get a storm that far north. Anthony Orr, our resident statistician, points out that in 1939, a California tropical storm made landfall near Long Beach, and it's the only one on record to make landfall in California. Scott Briller, I'm having chicken quesadilla right now. Well, at least I've tried to start it. Mirtha Gunter, always good to see you here. If you're still on, a big hello. Kakins 100, nice to see you on board. David Schwartz, Jason Schaefer, Robert Hurley, William Uber was on earlier, Justin King, you know, and all the saints, all you guys that are on here on a regular basis, as always. Thank you very much. So, you know what, a lot to look at. A lot of the Trami is going to be another thing to watch to see how it impacts the longer-term weather pattern. Again, the GFS, energize that low in the Pacific and put it in the Bering Sea so that you have a ridge in the Gulf of Alaska, a trough in the west, and a ridge in the east. The European says, no, over-energize it, get it east of the Aleutians and into the Gulf of Alaska so that you have a ridge in the west and a trough in the east. So if you got the trough in the east, it's cold. It'll be colder in the east. If you got the trough in the west, it'll be colder in the west. And by the way, just real fast, the reason why, let me bring it up front here. I'm going to go back and bring up the GFS for one moment. We'll go to the western U.S., and you might be asking, because you might be asking, well, why this time around is this thing coming up? Well, because of what's happening off the West Coast, you're getting this cutoff low. The problem is that each model handles it a bit differently, of course, and how it impacts Rosa. So, for example, here's the European at 144. Here's the GFS at 144. And Rosa is definitely visible here. See, there's the difference between the two models because the GFS has that negatively tilted shortwave trough that's off the coast of California, which you don't see, that often this time of year, extending pretty far to the south, picking Rosa up and bringing it northward. You see how it just swings around? Let me show you again. See how it just swings? I'll make sure you can see it. You can. You see how it just kind of swings up and around? That's a decidedly different view from the European, which really, mainly because it's absorbing it, it gets absorbed by the second system behind it. It never gets involved, obviously. And the second system, because that short wave is now lifting up and out, it doesn't. It's that second system's too far south for it to be picked up. So ramifications all over the place in terms of the longer range pattern, and so much uncertainty. that is driving all this. Going to make, as I said, for a very, very fun time indeed. All right, so you got my my Patreon link. Let me just give you one other thing as we wrap it up for tonight and say goodbye. For those of you who shop on Amazon, I have an Amazon link, and it's on the descriptor to this live stream and on the descriptor to this video. I'm going to put the link up right now. So if you shop on Amazon, if you use that link, it is a great way to support my channel because it doesn't cost you anything. You get your stuff on Amazon. Amazon throws me back some coin out of their pocket, and I get a few cigars out of it. So I appreciate many of you have used it. If you haven't, thank you for considering it, and we will see where it goes. Real fast, Ryan Ford, the teleconnections are still strongly negative on the EPO. I have to, I don't know the answer to that question right now off the top of my head. So I'll have to do a little bit of digging. Thank you, Scott Briller, for using the Amazon link. Also, I really appreciate it. So schedule tonight, 9:15 on, of course I smoke high quality cigars, Seth Dominus. Anyway, tonight, 9:15, the Rayo and Chaffee, the Joe and Joe Weather Show on Facebook, on my Facebook page, meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Patreon members, roughly 9 a.m. tomorrow. I got to get my oil changed. So 9 or 9:15, somewhere around that time, we'll have our Patreon live stream for just Patreon members only. And then we will go back to a normal schedule tomorrow, but we have that severe weather breaking tomorrow evening. So the live stream may be in flux depending on how rough the severe weather is, much like what you saw happen tonight. So thanks very much for being here, folks. I really, really appreciate it. I'm going to go have my dinner, or at least try to finish it. And we will either see you later or we'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Thank you for